Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we continue our Halloween retrospective with Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, co-author of California Tiki, out now from the History Press. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, tech director at Rooster Teeth, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. From the Rio Grande Valley, Professor David Bowles has received awards from the American Library Association, the Texas Institute of Letters, and the Texas Associated Press. To the dozen books he's written, he's recently added Feathered Serpent, Dark Heart of Sky, Mists of Mexico, and soon the YA steampunk graphic novel Clockwork Curandera. Say hello, David.
¿Qué onda, wey?
¿Qué onda? Okay, and finally, also in Denver, as always, color commentary from the one and only attorney Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello, Julia.
Hello, Julia.
Hello. Okay. Boy, this film. Okay, Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers is a 1989 American slasher film. It is the fifth installment in the Halloween film series, the fourth one to star the Shape, Michael Myers. It was directed and co-written by Dominique Othen and Gerard and stars Donald Pleasance, who comes back as Sam Loomis, and Danielle Harris, who comes back as Jamie Lloyd, the daughter of Laurie Strode, the original Final Girl. The film takes place exactly 1 year after the events of Halloween 4, Return of Michael Myers. Mike Myers here has returned to the sleepy town of Haddonfield, Illinois, to murder his niece Jamie, who is now mute. Dr. Loomis tries to save the day with the help of Sheriff Meeker. There's some other developments that we will get into. We did Halloween 4 last week. This week is Halloween 5. Next week is Halloween 6. Why are we doing this? Because it is the most continuity-bound section of the whole Halloween series. It is Halloween 4, 5, and 6 constitute a trilogy that people have called the Thorn Trilogy. It has its own sort of flavor and wackiness. We thought it would be cool to take a look at it because nothing could be better to sort of rocket towards the 2018 reboot, which we're very, very excited about. So, all right.
Which ignores all of these.
Right, and that's the whole concept. We want to get like I described the continuity of these films as a great big Michael Myers Katamari Damacy ball, just sort of sweeping up stuff, and then in the 2018 reboot, it just bounces and scatters things everywhere in a giant garage sale of continuity. So let's do, Julia. We don't usually have you open up for various reasons. It's just flagrant. I don't know. It's just
Sexism.
chauvinism, pure chauvinism.
Yep.
And so I think let's hear from you first, Julia, Tony, David, and then I'll go because Tony, I know you've been taking notes. Julia, opening thoughts. It's so funny. It's just so funny to say your name and Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers together. But lay it on me. What are your thoughts about Halloween 5?
Well, first of all, I thought it was funny because when you were setting it up, you said, and then Mike Myers does something. And I suddenly thought, what a different film it would be if you had SNL's Mike Myers running around doing all these things, a la Austin Powers or whatever.
Yes.
Just like everything exactly the same, except it's Mike Myers instead of the Shape.
Still less horrific than Cat in the Hat.
Yeah. True. So yes, you know what? Again, I figured out the secret to watching these films, and it is have really, really low expectations, and then you will enjoy the film. Because once again, I was like, well, this movie I've heard is garbage. I'm like, it's not as bad as I expected it to be. I mean, there's, it's not. Again, it's not. There's not going to be any Oscar. I don't expect there are going to be any Oscar awards being given out. But, it's made in the same year that we graduated from high school. So I think part of it for me is a little bit of a nostalgia quality of, I think we've said that about quite a few of the films we watched that take place in the 80s. But it's, again, here where I'm just like, oh, the clothes and the hair and all that. So that, I think that kind of already warms my heart to it. And, I think I still find it better than the running around the hospital in Halloween 2. The kids are interesting. I think the little girl is even better in this film than she was in the first one. She's amazing. She's just so good. And her little friend Billy is an interesting actor. So I think there was a lot of neat things to kind of hook onto here. I like the like how we get the shape back. You know, how we get Michael Myers back with his whole, it's kind of, again, predictable, stereotypical, somebody finds him and nurses him back to health kind of thing, or not finds him, rather he finds the guy, but, and then of course he's going to, he's going to give him his reward for spending a year nursing him back to health. But anyway, so, I think it wasn't awful. It was not, again, not the best film ever, but I definitely got a lot more out of it than I expected to.
Wow. Okay. Awesome. Tony, I'm dying to know where you're falling. Like Joya found herself pleasantly surprised. So what about you? Were you surprised, and was any of it pleasant?
So I saw this when it was in theaters. It's the first one of these I got to see with my girlfriend at the time, if I remember correctly. And time has not been kind. I wish I had left those memories. And that was it, because there's many aspects of this movie I remember being much better. And oh man, this was this is not good. Like, it's got some of the most annoying characters I've seen. I'm guessing that I thought Tina was really attractive and not just super annoying. And I don't remember back then thinking the only character I care about are the kittens in this movie. Which is definitely by the end of it. The kittens survive. Okay, cool. Everybody else, that's it. Oh man. And we get into it later. There's a couple other scenes I remember being like super cool, and they're just not as cool.
Interesting.
Yeah, again, not the worst horror movie from this era, but did I remember it so much better than it actually is.
Isn't that interesting? All right, so
I
David,
wish I had seen the movie Julia saw.
Yeah. So David,
but again,
I'm curious.
It's the expectations, Tony. It's the expectations.
I guess.
You remembered it being a certain way, so you had an expectation of it being that good, whereas I only heard everybody say it was atrocious, so I had expectation that it was going to be worse than it was.
Well, there might be something to that. It kind of makes you wonder, like, if you went to every movie that you went to go see, because, in some world where for some reason you go to lots of movies that people recommend against. And so every movie you go in with all of your friends having said, this is a terrible movie, you'll be deeply disappointed, you would actually wind up having a better time on average than if you went into a bunch of movies that your friends said you would like. I think that's my hypothesis right now. I don't know. I don't even know how to test that.
Yeah, but then you got to sit through a bunch of like movies where you're like, oh, you were right. Maybe I should totally not have seen the original Spawn movie or any number of, pick your poison.
There was a lot to like about this, even though the script was full of plot holes and there were some abysmally horrible characters, especially the pair of like Keystone cops and really annoying boyfriends and so forth. But there were sequences that I found really, really interesting that had lots of tension. Billy and Jamie being chased by Michael Myers driving that vehicle through the field, all the stuff in the laundry chute. Oh my God, that was really, really intense. Like just, Jamie's life being at risk that way. So there were sequences that I really got a lot out of. Loomis, of course, is just, doing his Loomis thing. Really interesting to see how they handle Jamie's like telepathic link with her uncle. There was, as Tony and I were talking about before we started recording, there's some really good ideas in this trilogy, but this is really where they start dropping the ball. There's so much that they should have carried forward. And one of the worst things they do, of course, is killing Rachel in the kind of offhanded, George R.R. Martin Red Wedding kind of way, just trying to mess with you instead of like letting her, I don't know, play a bigger role. And the things that they wanted to do to her that we'll get into that she had to fight against are really depressing. So yeah, not as good as 4. Maybe slightly better than 2 because it's not as boring as 2 is.
Yeah,
but yeah, certainly not one of the better films. 6 is a lot worse. So
Enjoy this while you can, because you're about to
Yeah, but
dive
see, now
into-
you told me that, so I'm going to expect it to be really awful, and
Okay.
then maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised again.
I can't wait
I will be
to get to
amused.
6.
I will be amused if you are pleasantly surprised.
So it's so weird to me how this movie is both. So I, like Julia, I actually found myself kind of going along with it okay. But what I thought was really strange about it, I'm going to say a bunch of stuff and then we'll figure out how it goes together. I feel like it is a sort of generic, trashy ripoff of Halloween movies. Like in other words, this is
I'm with you.
a movie where it's brightly lit. It's a bunch of 80s clothes. The plot doesn't make any sense. It feels really trashy. It feels like something that's written on the level of a Hallmark movie, and actually probably that's an insult to Hallmark movies. It feels just really derivative and trashy. So if you know that you're in for that, then whatever. It's definitely better than a lot of other trashy ripoffs of Halloween films, because it actually has Michael Myers. So that's something going for it. It has Donald Pleasance, although Donald Pleasance seems to be doing a weird trashy ripoff of Donald Pleasance. Half the
Oh,
time,
man.
Donald Pleasance seems to have no idea what he's talking about. Did you get that impression
No, they
watching
turned
him?
him into a sociopath.
Oh, he's a Looney
Like
Tunes. Sometimes he's
completely.
yeah.
I mean, it's like they gave him the direction. It's like they gave him the direction of like, you're so broken, you need to get Michael Myers out of the world. But then he makes other choices that aren't that.
Yes.
Like they made him like all go for broke, but he's also terrible. He's a horrible, and he's all over the map, even in his convictions.
So let's get to the character.
But I really hated what they did with Loomis. Now that I seen the other ones again and have that fresh in my memory, like he's a terrible. He doesn't even seem driven. He's just weird and awful.
Okay,
like,
so hold
the
that
whole
thought.
time.
Because I want to get to the characters in just a second, but just running down. So Loomis is making no sense to me here, and finally, I think. But there's also all of this very specific like continuity stuff that's thrown in that also is completely bonkers and seems half-assed and weird at different times. And finally, I feel like one of the reasons why it kind of is okay in the end when it comes out in the wash is because it does have the feeling of a completely meaningless film that doesn't make me feel depressed. In other words, I don't feel like I think that having just watched Halloween 2, the 2009 film again, I think I'm going to reevaluate Rob Zombie in the Halloween movies. I think that is a work of art. However, it does make you depressed when you watch it. There's a definite emotional resonance to those movies, no matter how bonkers they are. This movie is a bunch of people pretending, and one by one, it's each their turn to fall down. And so, if you're watching it and having a good time and passing, candy corn around, it's fine. But it is such a pale shadow of the original great Halloween film, and that's and in a way, it sounds so pedantic for me to say, and that's part of its charm, but it is part of its charm. So, okay, so let's get into the characters here, because it is 1 year later. First of all, but before we get to Donald Pleasance, go ahead, Tony. Yeah.
Before we get to 1 year later, we have the origin of where Michael Myers has been.
Oh,
which,
yes.
I realized is dynamite like a Haddonfield like PD thing.
Yeah.
Because when they try to kill him, they're like, "Oh, hey, I'm bringing up the dynamite," as if that's like you have your shotgun carrier.
No,
and then
don't you have dynamite in
there.
Don't you have dynamite in your closet or your like shed?
Well, I mean, even if I don't think it's standard issue for most police departments.
Police station.
I really couldn't say. I don't think so.
By Michael Myers.
I do think you would expect that. I mean, remember that when I was a little kid, around the 4th of July, you could buy a quarter stick of dynamite just for general, from a fireworks stand. But But that was nutty as a fruitcake.
Maybe they've been taking it up from people who have it, who aren't supposed to, and
they are close to a mine, but in no circumstances when they're just. Do I imagine a leftover cache of dynamite from whenever they closed off this mine? Anyway,
they had dynamite because the script needed them to have dynamite.
Yes, precisely the case. Yes.
So he escapes. he stumbles into a guy, I think they list him as Mole Man, who has a parrot, who has never heard ever, I guess, of the shape at all.
He's a hermit. He stumbles and he's comatose, remember, because he's been shot up. So he stumbles into the hermit's shed and then goes into a coma. This is a hermit. Then, here's the funny thing. There hasn't been a story.
A hermit with a parrot.
Yeah. Listen, if you and I wandered into the woods and stumbled into a hermit's shed, I don't even think. I mean, the only way that happens is if we've walked through a portal into 1928, because
it could happen in the mountains, like in the
you don't know that they're hermits. You don't know where they are. The whole point. I mean, look at Ted Kaczynski. Ted Kaczynski was just out there. Nobody knew where he was exactly.
Well, I guess that's true.
Even better is the guy. So the shape, which he's somehow never heard of, even from the 70s.
He's a hermit. He's offline. He doesn't have a TV. And
for that long? Like, you've never heard of a mass
from 10 years ago, like you've not had any kind of contact with the nearby town for 10 years.
But maybe he never saw, maybe he just heard about the boogeyman, but he never saw images of him, so he wouldn't know that this was him, especially 10 years later when he's been locked up and maybe dead.
Guy's wearing a mask and he's been shot.
It's a masked guy who's almost been blown up. But even better is when they show him when he wakes up a year later. It's like, oh man, that sure was weird that this guy, because he's collapsed in the exact same place. So some guy came into his shed with a mask on, partially singed, shot up, definitely, and just laid there for a year. And the guy's like, hey, what do you think, parrot? It's okay. Okay.
Did he like feed him intravenously? Did he change his diapers? Like, what did he do?
He didn't do anything. He just let Michael Myers sit.
Michael Myers doesn't need to eat or poop. He just lays there.
We see a flash. We do see a moment where there's a flashover, which candidly, by the way, is actually from an earlier version of this whole sequence that was shot and not used in the
with
film.
a different actor, an old man instead of a young
and where Michael Myers is surrounded by candles and stuff like that, and the guy who's nursing him back to health is doing lots of secret, weird, occultish.
That would have made a lot more sense if it had been like somebody who was involved in the Thorn, conspiracy, whatever. They've been waiting.
That would have been awesome.
They could
have given him a tattoo.
Yeah, so they cut that stuff. Why they cut that stuff, we don't know.
Because they're fucking morons. That's why they cut it.
I think they decided it was too confusing.
Collapsed guy sits in the corner. Well, I wonder if he's going to wake up.
Because Jason, they reshot all that stuff, cut out the old man and the mysticism and the mumbo jumbo, but then they add the Man in Black midway through the shooting.
Well,
they're like,
before we get to the Man in Black,
holes.
I just want to say that the parrot was so useless. That would have been so great to have that parrot actually alert the guy that he was about to get murdered, and then he still might get murdered, but at least you'd have like that suspense of the parrot going, watch out.
Set it up and knock it down,
it's like better is if the parrot became the harbinger.
Yes.
And this would fly out.
Oh my God, this parrot keeps showing up.
We just summarized this movie.
Yeah. If the parrot had gone to the children's hospital and warned Jamie, that would have been.
What is it? Is it Fire Shark Productions? Fire Shark Productions. Is that what we called it? What are we calling our production company that make all these movies?
I do not. So what I can't figure. Actually, okay. You said it right. There's no suspense to this. Michael just gets up and there's no, and that's why you immediately start to feel a little bit bored, because going through the motions is too nice a way to put it. It's just sort of Michael just sort of gets up and kills, like Zombie again. Oh God, I hate to lean on Zombie, but there's this moment when Michael is breaking out of his thing to go get with the main characters, and Danny Trejo gets in his way and tries to talk Michael out of killing him. Right. And that's a moment of great suspense. And there's a moment in this movie that's very like that, where it's very interesting. So there are some interesting moments, but here it's just
the
absurd.
Whole thing is, Jason, instead of having Michael Myers be in this coma and wearing exactly the same clothes a year later with the mask still on and everything like that, they could.
It's not on. The mask is on the wall for what it's.
Oh, that's right. The mask is on the wall. Yeah. You're right. It's a totally different mask from the previous film, though. So anyway,
Yes, indeed.
because they're
nice
trying to
one.
humanize him, they made a more human-looking face.
Yeah.
But it, some kind of montage, something. I kept when he pulled himself out of the water, I kept thinking of the movie, a John Woo film called, I think it's called The Killers. And there's this this hitman who appears to have died, but he is taken care of by, I think, a Buddhist monk or whatever. And you have all the getting better and training scenes, and just having
Wait, is that the one with Christopher Lambert and Mako? Is that the one you're talking about? Where Christopher Lambert?
I can't remember. I can't remember if Christopher Lambert's in it. Him, maybe. It's but it's about like this blind singer, female singer. Yeah,
yes,
that's the one, right?
I think that's somebody's gonna write in and say I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's the one where he gets taken in by Mako, who does his Mako thing and teaches him to take a sword.
So wouldn't that be awesome if if you had like Michael Myers and like this old guy in the shack with magic, and he cures his wounds and he teaches him to be, I don't know, to like use a butcher knife better or something. I don't know, something, some kind of training sequence where he becomes like.
So I actually like that idea.
Could have him just still be in a coma, but it's a montage of the hermit just kind of taking him around in a wheelbarrow, like everywhere.
Yes.
And they play "Let Me Tell You About My Best Friend." And it's just Michael Myers totally comatose.
That would be lovely.
But yet,
they're
like planting in his garden, and he's propped up against a tree. And
does the hermit give Michael Myers that tattoo? Is that where it comes from?
No, I think it's been there for.
It's supposed to have been there since he was
supposed to be, because of what you were talking about, reshoots and everything. But I think we're supposed to believe that he's. I mean, in the way this film plays out, he's had it for. We just never noticed it, I guess.
I guess so.
Well, I mean, that's the question: is did he get it? Like, he would have had to have gotten it in the asylum, because when else would he have gotten it?
Yeah, if the cult that I hate to take this continuity seriously, but we have no choice, okay? Yeah. If the cult that wants to harness Michael Myers has had their eye on him since he was in the thing in the hospital, then they may have cornered him and given him the tattoo back then in order to both mark him as theirs.
They could have given it to him in the coma. I mean,
that's true.
Corner him.
Yeah, well, but he wasn't in a coma. He was just sitting in a chair. He wasn't in a coma.
I'm talking about in the asylum when he's just lying there in the bed for years before they move him.
Oh, right. After he was blown up in the fire. I'm sorry. Right. You're exactly right.
But this would have need to have happened before the first Halloween film, one assumes.
Why?
For him to be possessed by whatever force this is.
Oh yeah, the possession, but the tattoo might just be to recognize that he's part of it.
My impression was that they don't intend to. He's not possessed by their demon, but rather they are a cult that wants to do X thing. And they want to harness Michael Myers as their tool, which is an unwise business plan.
Well, trust me,
I just want to point out.
It's none of this is ever clear at any point at all. In the next film, you do not know what the fuck is going on. Yes,
had something to do with his possession. That was always my impression from when I first saw this. But of course, it's as David said, it's clear as mud throughout.
Yeah, it's never made remotely clear.
Yeah.
Okay, so
if I were to reboot this whole thing, I would be like the parents are part of the cult. They put this mark on their son when he's born, and it brings it turns him into the shape and whatever.
See,
his
that's
sister's
awesome.
Sacrifice.
But I actually am really intrigued by the sheer stupidity of the other idea, which I think is which is a big evil organization thinks that they can harness Michael Myers, the same way that this is probably the same genius organization that thought you should give sharks bigger brains. That's like or
the Jurassic World people.
Right. We still think this is a good idea, right? Somehow we're going to keep doing these colossally stupid things,
or combine sharks with lava,
right?
There you go, fire shark. Woohoo!
I mean, there are always going to be these groups, that decide, what we need to bring the blob back because it will help to fight global warming or something, and then it's going to turn out to be a terrible, terrible idea. Okay, so he does have a good one last thing about Michael Myers here. He still doesn't use guns. He does have a new mask. I actually like it. I know that you said there's a problem with the mask that it looks too human. However, having said that, it's still pretty blank. I like it. I like this weird mask. It doesn't look like any mask that anybody would make. Like the idea that you would have this mask and just find it at a hardware store is still absurd. But it's a it's weird.
But who knows what'll happen when a hermit helps you fix your mask up?
Right.
Yep.
You know that at different parts of the movie, he's wearing a mask that has like a different nose because Loomis had broken his nose.
What?
So he had
Donald
to use a
Pleasence
mask.
broke the stunt guy's nose.
Yeah, so they had to use a different mask that would allow like a really thin nose mask so that they could like his nose could be bandaged.
I think this is like the second film where Donald Pleasence like hurts the person playing Michael Myers.
No,
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the second time this has happened.
How awful! I mean, can you imagine? Just that would feel really awful if I were a director on the set and my most expensive actor kept injuring other people, but he was a nice guy overall. I would just, it sounds like
not use him in the fight scenes. I'd be like, okay, we're just gonna use that guy for all your fight scenes.
Suddenly, you'd have this stunt man wearing like a fat pad who was like, and so Loomis would be like jumping off of roofs and like flipping and stuff like that, like Yoda.
I want to see that movie now.
Yeah, me too. Again, that's right. We should be taking notes because we're going to remake this movie.
Oh, this is that rooftop film that Tony's making, right? Yeah,
exactly.
Just an endless
with the parent harbinger.
with the parent harbinger.
Okay, this is the moment to talk about Donald Pleasence. So Donald Pleasence, remember in the last movie, he talked about nothing but how Michael was pure evil. This time he doesn't have that line at all. Instead, he does say his best line is something like, "I dreamed that he would burn in hell, but in my heart I knew that hell would not have him." That's a good line.
That's a good line.
It's the only good line in the whole film. Honestly, it is literally the only memorable thing that anybody says. But he is, like Tony said. Tony, tell us, he's a sociopath now.
He's completely unhinged. It's really disconcerting because even when in previous films, to everyone else, he's unhinged.
Yeah.
But only because he understands the stakes.
Right.
And he tries to convince. In this one, he's just all over the map. Like at one point, he chains him up and he tells him not to kill him. And then he wants to kill him. And in the past, all he's wanted to do is make sure that he's put in the ground for good.
Right.
Because he knows that's the only way. However you need to do that. But in this, he's awful to
Jamie.
To Jamie.
Yes.
He like sometimes he looks like it's all over the map. So sometimes he seems like, well, I need to convince her that the stakes are high because she's the only link, and that's the only way I'm going to kill him. But
I need her
sometimes
help.
When he does that, he doesn't even try to kill Michael Myers. He's just awful, and the way he treats her is so different. I don't know. I don't know if anybody knew what was going on. I hate to put that on the filmmakers because again, I don't think anybody tries to make a bad movie, but he's so just
inconsistent is a good word for it.
It's consistent at all.
Yeah.
And he's terrible. Like I don't like this version of Loomis because his singularity of purpose doesn't even seem to be correct. And in the past he's been a protector of these children. They've been Michael Myers has been inflicted on them. And here he can't decide if he's going to use her as a tool or if she should be protected or any of that. He's just this crazy person.
I think it's fair to say they're making it up from scene to scene. I really get the impression half the time with the flatness with which Donald Pleasence sometimes reads these lines or the sort of forced alarm. His performance kind of goes, it stays in histrionics. It goes from 11 to 12 back to 11. And I really get the impression that half the time he has no idea what these words mean. Like, what's my motivation? I have no idea. I don't know why I'm asking her to do this. I don't know why I'm sneaking in now, but other times I'm talking in front of other people. yeah, it's weird and it is completely like play acting. It's like if we decided to just make up a skit. Um, so that's depressing.
Well,
Yeah,
Consider-
because he's so good. Also,
yeah,
you count on Donald Pleasance, and he's not a bad actor in this, but it's just all over the map. It's so bizarre.
yeah,
so well, I mean, part of it
Disappointing.
is like so this director, the Swiss director Dominique, yeah, Otegin Girard, or whatever however you pronounce his freaking
Yeah.
name. When he was brought on board at Deborah Hill's recommendation, he had a meeting with Mustafa Kad, which is just an awesome name to say, and basically, said, yeah, I'm not even gonna look at the script that's already been written because I have analyzed this industry. I've looked at the films that are out right now, the Halloween, the Friday the 13th films, the Nightmare on Elm Street films, and I've been doing this market analysis. I know what people want, and I want to make a movie that will guarantee Halloween
Oh,
a
God.
place in the market. And he, in front of a COD, he picked up the script and threw it in the trash.
Oh my God.
And he said, "I want to." And so they wrote a script just like on the fly, writing it from, they had like a partial rough draft at the beginning, and they were writing it scene by scene. And this is what you get.
That's so weird. One of the notes I had written is that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I wrote down is it feels like we've reached a point that this in the series is like the later Elm Street movies, where we've seen so many slasher movies since the original, since part one, that this movie felt like an amalgam of this is what people want in a slasher movie. And they want, girls in the shower, and they want a slasher that's this, and there's goofy teens. And I mean, now I don't know why anybody would want like goofy sound effects when the cops are around.
There's for some reason there's comic relief cops. Like that's now we're like in full on Ed Wood territory. Where
cops, like they have their own womp womp.
Absolutely, and they're doing this.
I think it's well deserved because they really are Keystone Cops. I mean, they're just completely incompetent.
But why?
But Tony's right. You've completely changed the tone of if you're doing the womp womp sound effects and the comic music that's playing. That's truly strange. I mean, when you think about like where this series started, then this is truly nut job kind of stuff. And it's not like the kind of high irony that a film might do, where something is both hilarious but also horrifying. These guys are intended to be comic relief, but their lines are dumb. There's no actual laughs here. So instead, it's miserable to watch these two cops doing their so-called comedy, and it's really just a bunch of repetitiveness, and it's fine.
Man. But what David said, like that's the note I'd written, and that just corroborates exactly what was going through my head.
Yes.
Like it very much feels like I have analyzed what these movies are, and I'm going to supply that by rote.
Yes.
And holy crap. That's just it. I wish I had done the research on that. Thanks, David.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That makes just
I have to say
that is this movie. Like that explains everything pretty much.
Let's talk about Danielle Harris as Jamie here. Jamie, this is the part of this movie where I just in the same way that I really couldn't get behind the Predator because I was so just annoyed at wasting all this time with things like Tourette syndrome. The fact that Jamie has a psychosomatic muteness in half of this movie is just it just feels.
I have to disagree with you on that, Jason.
She nearly killed her stepmother, dude.
Oh
yeah, she's super traumatized. I mean, think about Maya Angelou.
Yes.
Maya Angelou was sexually abused as a child, and then her abuser was killed. And so she stopped talking because she felt like her voice had caused someone to die. And so, I mean, trauma.
Before you go on, I just want to say, Julia, I believe this is the first time that anybody has ever likened Halloween 5 to "I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings."
No, but I'm likening it to actual trauma that actually happens to real people. And so I think that part is perfectly reasonable. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
That may be, but I'm gonna go with Jason that I think her in this movie is full of just random histrionics. Like she's doing what she's told. And she's good at acting that.
She's
But
one of the
her
most
character
talented little
here
actresses
is
I've ever
so
seen. Yeah.
shrill and crazed and just, hey, so more intensity. Now move your eyes around more. Oh my God, look now, just more of everything. And then on top of that, the decision to make her mute and just all of that.
Which is
again,
abandoned relatively
it's
quickly,
just
though.
so much worse.
Yeah, it's true.
Than it had to be.
She snaps out of it.
I find
That's
that
true,
weird.
but I mean, after the first 30 minutes, like almost all that is abandoned, and it's just like once again her on the run from her uncle. And it gets more compelling at that point. So, I mean, what you're saying is true. I mean, it is overdone.
It's a really good point. You're right that we're mainly bitching about the first half hour of this film. If you think about it,
really bad.
It's execrable. What are you gonna do?
So this actress, Danielle Harris, she's super good. She's wonderful in these two films. She's not in the next one. We're not going to talk about the next one, but she's not in it. I don't know why.
Yeah.
She is in Halloween 2, 2009, and she kicks ass.
And in Halloween, and the remake of Halloween too. She's in both of them.
What? Oh, Halloween 1. Oh, Zombies Halloween 1. Yes, I completely forgot. But she's really good at, so she's a good actress. I don't know where else she turns up. I haven't really tracked her career. But yeah, she's fantastic here.
Yeah.
That's what getting on soaps really early, you get a lot of training. She's fantastic. Finally, we got to talk about Tina. Tina is the character played by, what is her name? Wendy Kaplan. So I actually do like Tina. She is this movie's Rachel for reasons unclear. The family business in this movie is completely confused. But before it was clear that Rachel was a foster sister, and they've kind of fuzzed that, and they keep saying stepsister and yada yada. All of that is greatly simplified, but it doesn't matter because now she's hanging out with fun-loving Tina, and I think it's because Wendy Kaplan is way crazy.
Wait, let me back up before you leave Rachel, and say that I really hated that they just didn't even bother with the whole stabbing of the foster mom thing. Like they have it in terms of the flashback of her approaching the woman by the bathtub and with the knife and all that. But then Rachel shows up to see her at the hospital, and it's not like she's ever stabbed her mom. Like the kids never stabbed her mom. There's just none of that. There's no.
Yeah, it was abandoned.
It was completely
mom's
abandoned.
Alive. Huh?
The impression I get is that the director basically just didn't want to do any of the story that was there before. It is so
but yet
strange.
they still showed the flashback to it, so she still did it. It's just that none of it matters. None of it has any consequences for Rachel's family. It has consequences for what's the little girl's name? I just blanked on it.
Jamie.
It's Jamie.
Jamie. For Jamie, because she has the muteness and the psychological the psychiatric hospital and all that, but it doesn't have any consequences for Rachel and her family. They're even still alive. Everything's fine. So that was kind of odd. And then I absolutely hated Tina. Jason liked her, and I just could not stand her. She was my absolute least favorite thing about this whole film.
I'm with you. She's the 80s manic pixie 80s annoying.
Yes.
And also terrible taste in guys. Like,
no
Tina, love yourself. You don't have to.
I know, right?
So awful. And she's awful too. And just constantly, in any scene, I'm the most bubbly.
She's so wild and crazy. Yes, it's true. She's bouncing off the walls. She's making weird voices. You really do expect at any moment she's going to pick up a carrot and do a Groucho Marx impression. She is a truly nutty actress. It's okay. Look, this is probably what she's been directed to do. Okay. It's your character is wild and crazy, but it is really manic. And again, just like the comedy so-called of the cops, it creates an awkwardness for us watching because we're like, I know that I'm supposed to find her so amusing, but I actually just find her sort of off the wall.
It's really funny because it's really funny that this is a Swiss director, and that because when I think about European films from the 80s, like action films, there's a lot of this really zany, broad humor. And it just feels like, this is just like what you would expect.
I had forgotten how awful she was, because I think again when I was
you just found her kind of hot when you were younger.
when I was younger, she like hits all the buttons that I could think of at the time. Like, oh yeah, man, this actress is really hot. She's hotter on Halloween.
Yeah.
Give her a pass. But oh man, as an adult, she is just annoying, chewing the scenery in every stage, and also all over the map.
Yeah.
Like she grieves, but then she doesn't, but then she's wacky.
Yeah.
Her boyfriend doesn't
from like scene to scene,
manic
literally from
all
like
over the map.
moment to moment, you know. It is really, and that's why in a way eventually my brain when I'm watching this goes, oh, this is nonsense. You know, this is no more serious than, you know, Teenage Strangler or something like that. I'm just gonna
you
watch
gotta
it
admit though that the whole scene where Michael Myers puts on her boyfriend's mask and gets in the car and
Yes.
is driving around. I'm sorry, but that's pretty funny.
No,
especially when
there's
she
great
goes, "Oh,
moments
my
in this
boyfriend's
movie.
a psycho," and we're like, "Yeah, kind of. You got half of that right."
Yeah, that actually,
Well-
there are several moments of you know, we're being hard on this movie considering some of the crap that I like, right? There are several moments that are pretty inspired. That's a pretty good one. I think some of the stuff in the barn. Okay, so we
Sure.
should
Well-
move along. Like what actually happens is most of the action of this movie is a whole bunch of stuff around a how they must not have had as much money here or something because two things happen. There's a big Halloween party that Tina is going to go to, and that therefore Danielle is going to try to get to Tina, and the Shape is going to try to get to Danielle. Sorry, Jamie is trying, you know, and so they're all going to sort of converge on this Halloween party. But there's also this plot line where Donald Pleasance is going to try to lure Michael to the Myers house, and for odd reasons.
However, you're
please.
glossing over two big things. Tina doesn't care that her friend is missing because she thinks, well, even though they're supposedly best friends,
right,
and she breaks hospital rules by bringing a huge dog, and it's just explained like, well, she and the dog must have gone to her parents. Whatever. It's gonna be great to have this house.
Well, no, the dog is there. She's like, "Oh, hey, Max, what's up?" I guess Tina left and didn't bother to take care of anybody feeding her dog.
It's exactly like in The Lost Skeleton of Cadavra, how Larry Blameyer always had these characters go, I wonder why they left this behind. Oh well. I mean, you know, oh well is literally how Tina like makes her way through life, just going, just like I don't understand that, but oh well.
Also, the boyfriend that Michael Myers kills and steals his car, which becomes important. The car becomes an important part. I guess because you know you need an American 80s muscle car, is also one of the worst people in the world. Hates everyone, and except when you think he's the worst person, Mikey, out comes the other boyfriend,
Spitz,
sauntering along acting like an idiot, and you're like, oh look, how did you top the worst person? At least Michael Myers, you know, kills him with like a pitchfork type of thing.
Let me ask you an emotional question. David Bowles, you brought up just a moment ago this whole concept of the zany broad humor. Do you think that in the moment, if we're watching this film in the theater, we're not slowing down to analyze it? Do you think the over-the-top characterizations, the sort of wild and crazy guyness of the blonde guy Spitz, and the sort of surliness of the boyfriend, do you think it plays differently, that somehow we just kind of get the vibe without actually slowing down you know what I mean? I mean, in other words, maybe these
I think this is part of the reason that Tony misremembered so much of this film, because when you're watching it in a theater with other people and there's the community, the communal reaction to things, and you know the excitement of the moment, you know, the popcorn fumes, whatever the hell it is, all of it becomes a little more palatable if you're in the right mood for it. And then it becomes so much better. It simmers in your brain, and kind of like all these different flavors accrue to it over time. And so, I think you're right. But except
like Mikey, for example, I can't imagine at any point in time, even though I didn't really remember him as much, thinking he was good or cool. They're trying to make him cool, but he's a super jackass.
No,
He's
but
like,
I
he's
have
like
no
the
idea if he's supposed to
alternative
be cool
version
or
of a
not.
jock. Like,
Yeah.
he wears a leather jacket. He's still a jock. Like,
Yeah.
in the pantheon of how horror labels, he's still that guy.
Well, don't
He's
these
supposed to be-
these characters feel a lot more like Friday the 13th characters?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
Because they're tropes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
broadly drawn in. Remember how last movie we said this is way better than the crappy Friday the 13th, like broadly drawn teenage characters. Not this time.
Nope.
This time they're just like sketched in. Hey, you're the asshat. Hey, you're the big class clown.
Yeah.
Hey, you're the manic girl. And just shoot. If you can't remember what
And we're
the
gonna
lines
kill
are,
the
just
one
say some
character
stuff.
that has like actual backstory and humanity and
Isn't that interesting? Yes. Yeah.
and they wanted to kill her by shoving a knife down her throat, and she was like, "Fuck that! You are not going to kill
Wow.
me off like that. I will, no." And so they went with stabbing her in the chest, Rachel.
It's really strange.
How did Michael Myers learn to drive a car?
Oh, remember?
Well,
he
that's
learned
a
in the
question
first
for the
one.
very
That's the question from the first one, yeah.
the first film. Yeah.
Did we decide?
Somebody. The line was, "Somebody must have taught him." It
Yeah.
was treated.
That's taken care of then. Good. The other
Yes.
question is, do we believe it's a good idea or a bad idea that they called another character Michael? Because obviously the idea of that is that she can go, Michael, and it's actually Michael Myers.
Yes.
But, I mean, is that confusing or is it fine? What do you think?
It seems lazy. It seems
Yeah,
like
I think that's
really
that's the
sloppy.
consensus.
Yeah.
Yeah, just for one gag to call a character by the same, it's just
Yeah.
usually a bad idea to have two characters have the same name.
Yeah.
Especially if it's only just for the one gag. It's like, that's silly. Find another gag. But
Nope, not in here.
Nope. This is the
gag.
the reign of Mustafa Akkad. He's
the gag is good though. Like I say, the moment where she's in the car with him, I think that's good stuff.
Yeah.
I like like.
Well, even before she gets in the car, because he's not opening the door and stuff. She's like, Michael,
Yes.
come on, open the door. And he's like, well, okay. I mean,
Yes.
you did call me by my name.
But even when you think of, again, this is adult me talking about it. You look at it and go, wow, this is the kind of thing that she expects from him.
Yeah.
Like she talks as if like,
terrible.
oh, this happens all the time.
We can go in for hours into the whole, teenage girls who have terrible self-esteem and go for guys who are abusive toward them. Let me put it this way. I could talk for hours about that scene. But that's kind of a given, I think, at this point with these movies.
Yeah, but again, I just want to, Tina, I know that you're annoying, but please love yourself. This is not the dude you need to be with.
I just want to say I really love her Madonna-esque look. The whole everything. She's just covered head to toe in like all kinds of mishmash of she looks like a doily. There's all these there's lace, there's she has the gloves, she has odd stockings. It's a very crazy 80s look, but it's like what a teenage
specifically
girl would
Madonna.
put together.
It's a very crazy Madonna 80s look.
Well,
Yes.
it's also kind of sort of rock chick, like it's like a denim jacket with like leopard print.
Yes.
And
Right.
Oh yeah, all that.
She may or may not have, both Boy George and Cinderella posters on her wall.
Mm-hmm.
It's a super good
And
point.
Bon Jovi,
Yes.
I think, is a given.
I mean,
so this is an interesting point talking about clothing. This is a good point to talk about how much danger this production put its two main actresses in. So Wendy Kaplan, who played Tina, there was a scene where they didn't use stunt people for the car chases, and so Tina's running. She's running through the foggy woods at night. The car is coming along, and she's wearing her Halloween costume, and she trips on her cape and falls to the ground as the car is speeding towards her. And luckily, the guy behind the wheel, I think his name was Don Shanks, was able to stop the car in time, but it was super, super close. And then
Don Shanks is the guy who plays Michael Myers.
And he was also driving the car, right? So he's a stuntman, so he plays Michael Myers, and And he was driving the car. And then when they have the actress that plays Jamie in the laundry chute, well, part of it they shot it in an air conditioning duct, right? And it was really her, and there was marks where she was supposed to stay. And Don Shanks is actually he's using a real fucking knife.
That's
he's stabbing
crazy.
a real fucking knife into the duct. And if she had slipped or had fallen, it was possible that he could have like stabbed her. It was like, an insane thing. And then, you know, there's a part
truly nuts.
they put her.
If that's true, that's
as a parent right now, I'm really, really pissed off at the parents of that kid for letting that happen.
These are things
that should not have been okay in her contract.
Yeah. These are things that she talked about later as an adult. And she also talked about how she was wearing that, you know, the scene where she's dropped into the coffin and there's all the lit candles around. She's wearing this highly flammable dress, and they actually drop her into the coffin with the candle. Like there was like complete disregard for actor safety on this film. Oh my god,
truly awful. I mean, you know, and assuming all of that is like well reported and true, that's just awful.
Yeah.
That's bad. Like today, I guarantee you, no stunt supervisor would allow any of that. You know, it's just deeply irresponsible. That's horrible.
That's not a really good reason why you would need to stab. If you cut it right, there's no good reason why you need to stab while she's there to put her in any danger.
No, it's nuts. It's
you know?
like that just feels amateurish and crazy, you know. And just go back for a moment to the fact that John Carpenter did the original movie for $250,000, and you know it basically was just all in a house.
And the stuff that I'm telling you is all from this documentary about the making of Halloween 5 called Dead Man's Party. So
golly,
came out in 2013.
Wow, that's really fascinating. So the big hunk of the middle of this movie is is at this party. The actors said there's so many things in this movie that don't get a line or two of dialogue explaining what something is, like such as we never learn exactly why there's a psychic link between Jamie and her uncle, but whatever. But
there's even a line. Loomis even has a line that says, "Don't you wonder why that is?" And we're like, "Yeah, we do wonder. Can you tell us, maybe, or find that out and like let us know later?"
They're really in the mode of this one. In this movie, they're really in the mode of setting up more mysteries that they are promising to pay off in the future, and you know, we will see, right, if they're actually going to do that. But they say that the bulk of it's going to happen at this big farm, which is having a big Halloween party that all the teenagers in town are going to go to. So there's a big 80s party happening with some old people. I thought that was hilarious. I did think that there were like some sour, depressed looking old people at the party. And the people are hanging out, and Michael Meyers, I can't remember why he's even here exactly. I think he's chasing after Jamie, who's chasing after Tina, but Michael takes the time to kill like everybody he runs into. And that's good because it fills up like 10 or 15 minutes of him running around a barn killing some dumbass horny teenagers. None of this is bothering me from an emotional perspective because none of it has any resonance at all. It's really, like I said, it's really exactly as though we're all actors and we've all decided, okay, now it's my turn to fall down, it's your turn to fall down, and so on. We don't get to anything interesting really until the kind of the last act, which is all at the Myers house, which is now
before you get to that though, I do want to say that I hate. Okay, so I'm going to say one thing I hated and one thing I liked.
Go crazy.
I hated the love scene between Tina and Spitz or not Tina, the blonde girl. What's the blonde girl's name?
Oh yeah, I forgot all about that. Yeah, what is her name? I can't remember.
Well, anyway, that character and Spitz. Oh my God, that was just so uncomfortable and boring and just like they just kept moaning.
Her name is Sam and Spitz. Yes.
Yeah, that was so awkward and just awful. So I hated that.
Which might be some people's experience as a teenager.
Yeah, but we don't need to see that. Why? It's horrible.
I'm with you.
And but I did like the payoff of his, or it's Fitz earlier pretending to be Michael chasing her with the knife, and then she actually, and then I guess not her, but Tina running out and is it she the one who runs out and screams and finds the cops, or is it Tina that runs out and screams and finds the cops?
Tina runs and finds the cops.
But it's like almost exactly the same, where she's running and screaming away from Michael, and now the other girl's running and screaming, but this time it's for real, and the cops are now dead. The completely useless cops are now dead. And of course, in this day and age, I watched that film and I go, well, if it was now, if it's a white kid, a white person coming toward them, they're going to not shoot him. But if it was a black guy, they'd shot him already. Yes. But anyway, the fact that they don't even pull a gun, when he comes to the window with a pitchfork.
For what it's worth, Michael impales these two teenagers who are having sex. That's a very Friday the 13th kind of thing to do.
The cops. And the cops impales.
But pitchfork. So then Sam, to defend herself, she picks up the pitchfork that was used to kill her boyfriend. That's pretty badass. But he's picked up a scythe that's like literally a giant scythe, and he like slashes her and kills her, which is a pretty disappointing effect because that thing should you should get a better effect off of that thing. And then I think they were trying to get rid of their rated X ratings. I think they had to cut down on some of that gore. Isn't that funny? That because when you think about like the effects in a movie like Rob Roy, which are way more graphic than anything here, and nobody would ever have considered, making Rob Roy an X-rated film. It's like the MPAA kind of has a double standard sometimes, when it comes to these things, but whatever. Yes. So the Donald Pleasance, if I recall, decides he's going to take Jamie and make her into bait to get Michael to the Myers house, and which has grown considerably. And
it's like the Monster House. It's altered its shape and grown.
It's much. There's no continuity in these houses. It used to be a very humble, like 2-story house. Now it's this enormous Victorian mansion, and
which really pissed off all the fanboys that had spent like years like building their own like miniatures of the original house, and then suddenly it's like, wait a minute, that's what?
Right. No, absolutely. And the reason to make it into this big place was so that you would have some of these really impressive rooms inside of it, such as although let's be honest, nobody cares about any of this stuff. You could just as well have had a regular 2-story house, and then on the inside had enormous rooms and a laundry chute, and
like the TARDIS of houses.
Why not? I mean, honestly, who would care at this point for me to say, oh, did you know that house has a laundry chute that goes down to the basement? Fine, that's
right.
like that's the thing that's going to take you out of the film. But there are a couple of good moments. Before we get to the laundry chute thing, there are like 2 moments where Michael is momentarily frozen. One is where Jamie manages to talk to Michael to kind of be nice to her, and this is like a moment when Michael, they have it in his head that Michael wants to put Jamie into a coffin, wants to kill her, I guess, and she talks to him for a while and gets him to take off his mask, and this is when it invites us to think, like, what the hell is Michael Myers? Is Michael Myers a poor, like, misguided kid who has been possessed of an evil spirit? And this is like Reagan suddenly coming through and talking over the demon? Or what? Like that's what we're kind of given to think at this exact moment. And then he freaks out and he's back to his killing mode. And it happens again. This terrible movie, and yet there's a couple of these great moments because it happens again when Donald Pleasance talks to Michael and kind of almost gets him to give up his weapon. That's pretty amazing. So those are good moments. I actually did really like that stuff.
So what do you think about the photography? Like, there's a lot of really, I kept coming back to whoever the DP was, really liked a lot of like strange angles.
Yeah.
And there's parts of it that seem like they want to be elevated or artsier than maybe the film would let on.
It's a really
But
good point.
it's all fairly jarring, it seems.
Yes.
Like
it
there's
reminds me
really,
of the
really
angles.
pat shots. And then there's some like odd angle thing, and then there's also the way it's lit is slightly different. Oh, and we're gonna push somebody out of a thing in slow motion. We're gonna film that this way. It felt very like two different people filming it.
Well, do you remember the 1990s version of Carrie that we watched that suddenly had all of the like the weird filters and the weird angles occasionally? Like these are like off the shelf strange angles that you're just as likely to see in I don't know, Unsolved Mysteries or something like that, so it's
like a student film.
So I agree with you, but it's all noise, none of it's none of those of the and like the fisheye lenses and stuff like that. It really feels like it's and I understand that I'm a dick, that I don't make movies, I don't know anything about this stuff, but I mean it just feels unnecessary to keep using all these different. But you're totally right.
It just felt like go ham, or why are there two different kinds of feels to this movie?
Yeah.
What was very strange.
Yeah.
Either you're gonna shoot kind of a, is this trying to harken back to Italian horror or European horror, or is it the splatter thing? So when you see something that's very strange, it just feels even more out of place.
Right.
I don't know. It's very, very weird to me.
Yeah. What's strange is that all I remember now of the end, because this whole I'm now trying to remember. Oh yeah. Okay, so I apologize for not remembering how this.
So Loomis. Okay, so you said the scene about the whole knife thing where he's like, put the knife down, let's talk, and then he manages to stab Loomis. You think he's dead, but he's not, and so then he has the whole thing with the coffin and all that. But Loomis comes back, is able to save Jamie before she gets killed by the reawakened Michael. And then he lures him with that weird, again, like you guys were talking about before, about how weird it is to see Loomis just kind of go crazy. He's like, oh, do you want this? Is this what you want? This little girl? Is this what you want? Oh, come on. Come get the girl. Come get the girl. And then he's like kind of going through the house, and then he gets him into this room where he set up this very elaborate trap. And he traps him a la Looney Tunes style with a big net that falls from the sky, starts hitting him, which is when he breaks his nose, starts hitting him with big wooden plank after his weapon goes away and fails and whatever.
That hurts my heart to think about that. Yes.
And then he gets lugged off to the jail where he's going to be lured off where he's going to be transported to maximum security prison, except that the Man in Black finally shows up we finally find out why he's there, and he's there to blow the crap up out of
to
all
fill
the
a
cops.
plot hole. I mean, to blow
Again, the cops always have to. What? What'd you say?
I said he's there to fill in the plot hole. I mean, yes, blow up the.
Right.
Yeah, blow the crap out of all the cops again, because they just can't. They can't keep cops. Like Jason said, he goes, "I would not want a job in this police department in this town."
Yes.
So he kills all the cops, and he takes Michael, and only Jamie remains to be witness to what has occurred.
Because the Man in Black has off-screen killed everybody. Well, no, there's some on-screen, but basically...
you see him come in and just start... You see it from Jamie's perspective that everything's just suddenly getting blown up, and that it's him.
So the Man in Black has come to take Michael away. Yeah, Tony, go ahead.
But... I remember thinking, hey, that's kind of cool. Complete, though, he's just such a caricature. Like, leather trench coat. He kicks a dog. He's so evil when he gets off the bus. He kicks a dog.
And the funny thing is, he's played by Don Shanks. He's actually played by some guys playing Michael.
But we never see his face.
No, but so the idea was to make him so that he could be maybe related to him. So that if they had
because they added the Man in Black halfway through the script. They were noticing that all the plot holes at this point. They're like halfway through shooting, and Akkad's like, let's add this mysterious figure. And we won't explain who he is. We'll wait till the sequel to do that. And
it sure doesn't feel tacked on. That's. I'm telling you, all the
So
cutaways that are
smoothly
filmed in kind of a slightly different style, and him just kind of showing up when there's no other actors, does not in any way feel like reshoots or inserts ever.
Oh, Tony, why
and
must
that's
you be
also
so sarcastic?
introducing him is when they came up with the idea for the mark. Dominique decided, okay, well, let's have this mysterious figure be a man in black, and he can be spiritually connected to Michael. Let's put a mark on both of them.
Tattoo.
The little thorn tattoo. And
If only it had really been Johnny Cash.
You know what's crazy is that
whenever he shows up, that would have been amazing.
actually would it's sad because that means that they're building continuity on, like, when you think about it, if you really look at Halloween 4 by itself, Halloween 4 had almost none of this. It even could be read as there wasn't really even the psychic connection. And this one, they introduced the psychic connection, and then they introduced the Man in Black. And in theory, Halloween 6 is going to bring it all together into a coherent.
Now my expectations are getting higher for Halloween 6. Now I'm afraid I'm actually going to be disappointed.
Ooh.
Don't do that. Don't raise.
Yeah, don't raise those expectations. Let's keep them
He
down.
shot a man in Haddonfield just to watch him die.
But I mean,
But you know what? I got to say, I know you didn't care for the psychic connection thing. I actually really like. And by the way, we have not mentioned her little friend Billy, who's also psychically connected.
Who was supposed to be killed, by the way.
I like the psychic connection. I think it's very interesting, even if they didn't explain why it really exists. It doesn't matter to me because, first of all, it allows us to have this character be beloved again, even after she stabbed somebody. Because I was like, well, how the heck are they going to bring her back? She's just evil now. But no, she's not evil now. She was just kind of possessed by this connection, and presumably her time in the psychiatric hospital helped her to not actually act out specifically the things that she's seeing, but she still sees them and she's still connected.
I just don't like any of this. The only way that I would have liked this, the psychic connection, and here's why. I don't like psychic connection bullshit in movies like this because it's always affected by showing actors just being sort of bug-eyed and staring at the camera. And it annoys the hell out of me. It just, Jesus, it just feels so tedious. What would have been interesting would be if her psychic connection had manifested by, let's do what they did in, I'm gonna say this, and it's gonna sound stupid as all get out, but in the later Phantasm pictures, where sometimes he can go into another realm and be like foot to foot with the tall man, that would be cool. So
you're saying that the way to make this movie better is by making it more like the later Phantasm pictures?
Be careful what you wish for. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah.
I think so. For me, I think it's an interesting turn.
Yeah.
But how they use it is not effective. Like a lot of the things in this film. But having a psychic link, and having, again, you're presented with a work of art, and I think it is crappy sometimes that we go, oh, well, if it only done this, but I'm going to go there and,
go crazy.
You could do a cool thing with Donald Pleasance grappling with, I hate to use a child to track down Michael Myers, but I must.
Right.
And there's a lot.
We're going to remake the movie, so we may
as
well make another note. This is another thing we're going to include.
Yeah.
Along with all the other stuff.
But like, there's a lot of meat to that, and there's a lot of like interesting things and a lot of emotion you could bring to it.
Yeah.
It doesn't just have to be
right.
By the book slasher movie.
Sure.
But even when he does that, it's so crazy. It's like the next thing, I expect this Loomis, you could sub in nowadays Nick Cage in a future movie. It would just be this manic, like, I'm doing Nick Cage things. And it would work because this one's so crazed. It's a shame because I think there's cool stuff you could do with the psychic connection thing. Have her, she is troubled, and it does take it to a different place, and that's fine. But it's so bizarrely handled and then dropped whenever, and then brought back up for just random convenience throughout.
But it's good. It's good because she's able to save. Even though she doesn't save Rachel in the long run, she's able to save Rachel at the beginning when Rachel's all naked and running out. Oh, by the way, I want to say a couple things about that. So, first of all, the Loomis just kind of going back to the beginning for a minute. Loomis hanging around the psychiatric hospital, creepily by himself, and like shaking her and grabbing her and telling her to help him. That was creeping me out. I'm like, why is nobody telling this man that he needs to not be there anymore? Then also the fact that Rachel runs out naked after Max is missing and goes to the next door neighbor and is like, hey, and he's just like, oh, hi, and he kind of like pleasantly looks her in the eye like, this is perfectly normal that this naked girl has just run up to me.
Yeah.
I was just like, there's no way that guy would be behaving that way. He'd be like either looking down to the ground like, okay, but he's got to say something like, are you all right? What the hell's happening right now?
Yes. Some sort of
maybe he
human
thinks his
reaction
porn fantasy is about to play out.
What happens in Haddonfield stays in Haddonfield.
Right.
Yeah.
It is, that's the other thing. There's nothing at all about the notion that Haddonfield has got to be a scarred community, a deeply scarred community. There's none of that. Whereas if I recall, there's got to be another film where they're like Haddonfield doesn't celebrate Halloween because or is that an idea that ever gets used in any of these? That Haddonfield, basically bans Halloween the way that the town in Footloose banned dancing. I think that might have been a concept for Halloween 4 that just never got used. So unless something like that turns up in Halloween 6. Yeah.
It wouldn't have to be banned. It could be a memorial. Like they could use it as, every year instead of having kids trick or treat in this town, what we do is we all come together to the park and we all just remember, kind of like people do with 9/11, or what people do here, like here at Columbine they have stuff like that. So it's like just having some kind of recognition of what's happened and not be like, but everything's normal, we're all trick or treating, it's all good.
It's a really interesting idea, and yeah, there's nothing at all like that. Okay, so yes, and that's the end. We've got Jamie screaming at the fact that the Man in Black has once again killed all this year's cops, and so we're gonna need another bunch of cops. And
Send more cops.
Right. That's a nice callback to Return of the Living Dead. I love it.
You can picture the recruitment posts from other towns. Peaceful Haddonfield. Don't you want to work? Great benefits. Excellent life insurance.
Years without every member of the police force being massacred. 0. But we're hoping for the best.
Oh, we flipped that number back to 0 again. That's
1990
awkward.
is going to be the year to beat this.
I just love the idea of like a Simpsons style sign of like years without all the police officers being murdered. 0. That just cracks me up.
So okay, so that's the end. I mean, clearly a lot of questions like why do so these are the questions that Halloween 6 is promising to answer. All right,
I'm so excited. I can't wait. I think it's going to be great.
Here are the questions that Halloween 6 is promising to answer. Why?
So sad.
Why do Michael and the Man in Black have the same tattoo? Why is the Man in Black getting Michael out of?
When you say that, I'm just picturing that it's like Flash on the one of 2 tattoo parlors in Haddonfield. It's like up there with like the panther, a skull, a knife with a heart through it, and then that thorn tattoo.
Well, like they really do terrible. It like when you go to a carnival and they have face painting, and they're like, you can get the spider or you can get a rainbow.
Well, that's what Flash is on a tattoo parlor wall. It's basically like, they'll have their own designs and stuff, but like it's I want that, right? If you don't design your own, it's kind of plays. But I just picture that built as the thorn tattoo as flat. Like, I was gonna go with the butterfly on my foot, but I think that one, but like on my wrist.
On my wrist, yeah.
Okay,
so
your money.
Michael and the Man in Black have the same tattoo. Does the Man in Black have a role to play for in Michael's life and vice versa? Does Jamie continue to track Michael psychically? And will Dr. Loomis survive? These are questions that we could, and why also? What is special about the Myers family? Why why has all of this happened to them? And all those questions are hopefully going to be answered in the next movie, but I think they're probably not. But we'll find out.
It's all a plot to take over their baloney factory.
That's
Does
Clearly.
Bologna have a first
Scooby-Doo
name?
style.
Is
Take off
Bologna's
the
first name OSCAR?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's all. Oh, that's it. So they take off the mask, and it's Old Man Withers, and he was trying to scare everyone away from the Myers Haddonfield Bologna factory.
That's right.
Six film long con.
Super funny.
So
Yeah,
Ta-da.
I'm just gonna
Solved it.
interrupt here to say that I posted the other day that I started singing that jingle for no reason. I was like, my baloney has a first name, and Sophia, who's 16, goes, "What?" I go, "It's OSCAR." She's like, "SCR, what?" I'm like, my baloney has a second name. She goes, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "It's MEYER." She's like, "What even is that?" It's really funny.
Like it's before, but it has been a while since they've shown new commercials. So
this is just one of the ways we torture our teenager. One of them anyway. Okay, let's get our final thoughts about Halloween 5. I think we've raised more questions than we've answered.
Or that anybody will ever answer.
Right.
Okay, well, my thoughts are I can't wait now for 6 because my expectations are so high now.
Ooh.
I know all the questions are going to be answered. We're going to explore deeply why the psychic connection happened and what it really means. We're going to maybe get into Michael's true essence and his soul, and does he have one, or is he truly evil? I'm excited.
You should be
I
playing.
actually literally know zero
up.
things about. I know zero things about Halloween 6. So if any of those things happen, I'll be surprised. But
You know what's hilarious to me, Julia, is you and I watched Halloween 6 in the theater.
well, I don't remember it. Well, then I should say I remember zero things. I may watch it and go, "Oh yeah, I remember this," but right now I don't remember it at all. I think I said everything. I'm excited also about that we're going to make our own version of this film with all these great ideas that we have, especially the Parrot Harbinger, which I'm super psyched about. That is all I have.
That's an amazing idea. Yes. Tony, tell us why there's a hobo in this movie, and also what are your final thoughts?
Well,
you don't have to answer the hobo question.
Unintentionally, didn't mean to talk over you, but yeah, you should play the beep sound of backing up and just back up all those expectations. Beep, beep, beep. Like just back it way back. One of the things that stuck out with me, this is not a great film. It does have some really intense parts. It's great. I am sad that if I did have a crush on Tina, adult me is just completely annoyed by her. And one of the worst parts in my final thoughts for years, I guess, oh man, it must be decades now, right? That saddens me that I'm old. But anyway, the scene where the man in black is enshrouded in smoke and shooting, I remembered that being so much cooler looking than it actually is. And I was so deeply disappointed that it did not look like how my brain had twisted and made it so much better than how it was actually shot. And that made me so sad when I finally I was looking for it. I'm like, well, at least, even if the rest of it is sucky, at least it's got that one just cool shot. Like the smoke is billowing and it's moving in this cool spiral. And no, it didn't look anything like that.
Not even closely.
No, I was so sad by that. And I remember just his presence being kind of cooler and more interesting. But I don't know, when David kind of laid the cards on the table that he got from the documentary, it made so much more sense. Everything about this movie definitely falls into place. Everything I was thinking. It's not awful, but it is not the film I remembered when I saw it in the theater. And that makes me a little sad. And that was the first, film I saw in the theater. And you kind of, I always I think I can't remember if I talked about it on this podcast, but I always liken film to the like tree cave thing in Empire Strikes Back, where you bring into it kind of whatever you bring in. So your thoughts, everything around you affects your viewing in a theater when you enter that dark, whether it's cathedral to you or not, it is sometimes to me. And I think that's probably part of it. it was interesting to rewatch it, and again, like there's some really great scenes, but it didn't held up for me as much as I had wanted it to.
That's fabulous. That's fabulous. David, what would you add to that?
Well, I mean, we did briefly mention the fact that this film was originally rated X. This is, I guess, before the NC-17 rating, and they had to carve out a lot of violence, which is kind of ironic since the previous film they had to film blood spatters and stuff to add to the gore. So I guess this time they built in a lot. And one of the things, and as Julia mentioned, we really didn't talk too much about Billy, the stuttering friend of Jamie, who is just always trying to excuse her behavior and calm her down and things like that.
Translate for her.
And translate for her when she's unable to speak, stuff like that. An interesting kid actor, and that the scene where they're being chased down by Michael in his '80s muscle car is pretty intense. And actually, one of the films they had to cut, and one of the reasons, you brought up earlier, Jason, that there are films that have more violence and don't get that kind of rating. Well, it's the type of violence. That car chase scene originally ended with Billy being killed, but being run over, and it was apparently a pretty graphic scene. And that was one of the things that they were told, if you want this to come out in theaters, you're going to trim that shit, because we cannot have a child being harmed, or to show a child being harmed. So they had to go back and make adjustments, edit it so that the accident looked less real, and now the car appears to have missed him, and then they use some footage they had to show him alive and well at the clinic at the end. But he had already left the set. This is the actor Jeffrey Landman as an adult, thinking back about what happened and saying, this is, I was originally killed in a really, really brutal way, and then they were like, oh shit, we apparently can't do that and actually have this movie come out in theaters. So there's a lot and 4 and 5 of putting children in harm's way, and that does not stop in 6, and it's not something I'm a particular fan of. When you're a parent, seeing children put in those positions is especially difficult to watch. And so, my final thought is there are some good scenes in here, but there was a lot of really messed up stuff going on behind the scenes, and the more you learn about it, the less respect you have for it, and the more you kind of want to just retire it and not maybe come back to it ever again. And that's kind of the way I am right now. This is the only time I ever saw the film. I can't imagine ever wanting to see it again.
Yeah.
Just because of all the stuff that I learned about what was going on. Yeah.
Wow. Very good. And I should say that in the panel discussion that was on one of the DVDs, where all the actors were around, Daniel Harris is around, nobody's favorite Halloween is Halloween 5. It's very possible that out there, it could be among our fan base, they'll be like, hey, we think you gave this movie short shrift because Halloween 5 really rocks for these reasons that you're not thinking about. And I honestly am looking forward to hearing from those people, because me personally, I actually ended up being kind of okay with this movie on the level of, this is basically a ripoff of a Halloween film. It's coming in an assumption that if we get a few things screwed up this time, there's going to be another one in 12 months. We're just going to keep doing them. It doesn't matter. Some will be better, some will be worse. It's fine. I can completely get into that notion, and just kind of forgive a great deal. I also know that that's not actually what's going to happen, that for some reason this movie is going to wind up being such a misfire that they don't actually get to come back 12 months later, and in fact it's going to be a while. Yes. So
and then that film is going to be so bad they're going to be like, we are going to pretend that continuity doesn't even exist, and we are going to go off.
Right, but that's going to happen pretty quickly. You get down to
within
it,
2 years of it.
Yeah, just 2 years later, they're like, go back, just go back. But I cannot wait to get to the next one. So that actually, this has been a lot of fun to discuss. Okay, so we'll talk about dying to know endorsements. Like, what have you guys been watching or reading, listening to? Anything that you'd like to share? Some of us have been super duper busy, so you may have nothing. I'm dying to know what you might have. So, what do we, Julia, you're first. Do you have any endorsements for us this week?
Oh, well, David knows what I'm going to endorse, and it's the new Doctor
Yeah.
Who.
Ah.
No, you're welcome to also talk about it if that was your plan as well. But yeah, I'm
No.
just so excited about Jodie Whittaker. Today was the first episode with the first female doctor, and yeah, it's just great fun. She's wonderful. She's kind of got a David Tennant vibe to her, but
Totally.
definitely her own person. Just very lighthearted and clever, and she's gonna have it looks like she's gonna have 3 companions, 2 males and a female. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out, because it's a little bit different than the dynamic they've had for the previous ones. It's a different crew, crew and director and all that, producer. So, it's going to be fun to see how this all plays out. But I think everybody's really excited. I haven't heard anybody say anything negative about it. So check it out if you're interested.
Wonderful. Okay, Jodie Whittaker of Broadchurch fame suddenly joins one of the longest-running franchises in television history. Tony, what about you? Do you have anything for us?
I need to post on the page a bunch of the movies that are coming out and who's putting them out. I still say everyone should be psyched for Terrified on the 11th, coming to Shudder. That, again, is one of the movies that creep me out the most at Fantastic Fest, and that is no mean feat, in my opinion. Again, when it comes out on Shudder, check out Dead Wax. That's really cool. On a side note, I've been listening to a lot of the Plasmatics, getting back to that, which they were great. And I'm going to endorse the soundtrack for your week to be the Plasmatics, as well as, New Voivod, one of my all-time favorite bands since the 80s, has put out a new album that sounds a lot like their 89 album, which got me into them, and called The Wake. And on video games, I have been playing the new Fists of the North Star game, which was made by the company that makes the Yakuza franchise. And man, oh man, if you find it cathartic to punch digital thugs into pieces and then sometimes even grab their exclamations where they yell things like shit balls, and then you grab it out of the air and beat them with it. And then you can also become a bartender and serve the people of the wasteland. This is the game for you. And if that sounds crazy, that's okay. But long have I wanted to come home from a very stressful day and punch bad guys into literally chunks, and then on the side be a bartender and help the people of a post-apocalyptic society. It's exactly as crazy as it sounds.
That sounds kind of awesome, actually.
This is the North Star Lost Paradise. I'm sure some people will be like, oh, that's a little repetitive, but so is the show, and I still love that. But yeah, it's great fun for me. So
wonderful recommendation. David, what about you?
So I watched a few really, really good horror movies a couple that are really good and one that's pretty decent. So I saw What Keeps You Alive, which is this really, really fantastic Canadian horror film about this married couple, 2 women, Jules and Jackie, that go celebrate their 1-year wedding anniversary in this cabin by a lake, and one of them is not what she appears to be, and it is an intense fucking movie. It is really, I cannot recommend it highly enough. So cool. And then today I watched the film Revenge. It's a French film, although part of it is in English, from French director, female French director Coralie Fargiat, I think her name is. Her last name is pronounced.
Wait. And is this the one where where they leave her for dead?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I thought it was an Australian movie. Anyway, go ahead and continue.
Well, I think it's taking place in Australia, or anyway, okay. But they are, the 3 douchebags are all French speakers, and I don't know enough about French to tell whether it's French from France or from Switzerland or from Canada, but they're speaking freaking French.
That was a big hit last year at Fantastic Fest.
Yes, and
so
it is
everybody. I still need to see it. It didn't fit into the slots.
Yeah,
I mean,
I really recommend it. It's I mean, it is like I spit on your grave kind of revenge fantasy, but it's done with more of a feminist lens, and it's just really delightful and horrifying. It's so gory that like Julia would not be able to stand. Like there would be like a couple of frames that she'd be like, "Oh, I'm out of here. I'm not watching this goddamn movie." And then I saw this other really kind of interesting, a little odd film called Mohawk, which is like this historical drama horror film set near the end of the War of 1812. And it's this really weird thing where these two members of the Mohawk tribe, one of them actually played by an actress who is Mohawk, and their mutual lover, this British soldier, are being pursued by American soldiers, and again we just like in Revenge, we have the female character surviving and taking her revenge. And so I've been watching a lot of like women killing and fucking people up. That's those three movies are all about, like, just because I've been in that mood. Like it was
I can imagine.
So fucking like just pissed off.
I can't imagine why, actually.
Yeah, no, I know it's really hard. So on behalf of all the women that I admire, that I look up to, that whom I love and support. I mean, I've just, as an ally, have felt so furious that I've been looking for movies where women just like fuck men's shit up, and these are the three movies that I recommend if you're in the mood for that kind of stuff.
Can I add to that? I think I said it, but if you're looking for that catharsis, the Shaw Brothers movie Heads for Sale will also fit the bill. Really good, because the female protagonist in that takes none of it, and it is amazing when she's like, "This is what I'm gonna do."
That's awesome.
Great. Heads for Sale. It's on Amazon Prime, maybe Netflix, but I remember it on Prime.
Check it out. I've got everything. So
remember the wonderful clan in Bride with White Hair, where their motto is, "I see a man, I kill him."
Yes.
Bride with White Hair is also really great.
Yeah,
it's so good. Oh my gosh, those are good movies. Yeah, we've got to do that sometime. That fits just fine into the podcast, honestly. Bride with White Hair. That's some excellent work. Okay, so I got two things to mention. One is this is going to be the weirdest endorsement, because if you're not down with the violence, then you may not want to watch this at all. But I did go back and watch Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, because I'd never seen it, and it was one of those movies that everybody hated. Yeah, I've never heard a movie get such just revile from among the critical class. But I gotta say, first of all, the girl who plays Laurie is one of the best actresses ever. She's fabulous. You believe her. She seems to be panicked most of the time, and you completely believe her. She's wonderful. I used to think that Rob Zombie's use of violence was very mean-spirited, but now I realize that it's actually, in a way, very sensitive, because he makes it very uncomfortable to watch. And so part of me is now thinking that it's not an irresponsible use of violence, it's a daring use of violence, and kind of more okay with that, except for that it's unpleasant to watch. So there's no fun. Those movies are no fun to watch, whereas I think you could watch idiotic stuff like Halloween 5 over and over and over again, and it really does feel like I said, like a bunch of actors running in the woods in a skit. It's your turn to fall down. Nobody cares. The things that happen in the zombie movies, you really do feel them. There's also a lot of dumb shit. I mean, Malcolm McDowell's Dr. Loomis is
in the second film. In the first film, he's not so bad. The second film, he's like, what?
I think it was
a bad choice.
Yeah, it is right. I think that's well said. It's a deliberate choice, and it's ultimately pretty silly and dumb and broad parody, which just feels out of step with the rest of the movie, which takes itself really seriously.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think that if they had made a different decision there, if they had made Loomis like be traumatized, like he was essentially almost killed at the end of the first film,
right?
And if they had like explored that instead of like turning him into like this douchebag who's going to capitalize on that, like he's in Scream 14 or something like that, I would have found that a lot more interesting. Like one of the things that I think is missing from the trilogy we're talking about now is that Sam Loomis, like his life, like we never see anything about his life. Does he have a family? What is Michael Myers? What impact on his life as a human being? He's just all we ever see him as a
I'm
really
guessing he lost his family to the obsession that he had with this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but there's not even a moment
I would like
of
to see that.
Yeah.
And so that would have been good and also in Rob Zombie's film just to see that.
You raise a really good point. Like if you can imagine Donald Pleasance going, because Donald Pleasance in real life, he has a girlfriend, he has an ex-wife, whatever. You never see Donald Pleasance's Sam Loomis go to a payphone and call like a daughter and try to talk to her. That never happens, That would have been a fine moment. But whatever.
That makes me think of the Doctor Who episode that came out today. One of the things that I found really refreshing is it's a throwback to like the first, second, and like third season, even the fourth season, where characters had depth to them. There was like you spent time with them. Every single, even the bit parts in today's first episode of this season or series, they had something. Like even the guard at the place where the cranes are, he's like talking to his granddaughter, his mute granddaughter, on this like tablet, and like everybody has something. Everybody feels so real and so human, and that's missing in. That was missing in the last couple of iterations of Doctor Who, in my opinion, is like the characters didn't feel real. They felt like caricatures, and it's certainly missing from the Halloween films. And one of the things that makes the first one a masterpiece, aside from like all the great things that we've talked about, is just that the characters feel real. They feel like real teenagers, real kids. And when they're and they all have personalities and quirks, and when they're put in danger, we're upset and we care. We don't want them to be hurt. And
and they're not wild and crazy.
Who cares if Tina dies? I don't give a shit if Tina dies. Whatever,
Right. She's PJ Souls. Who knows whether she's realistic, but all they are just teenagers. Their lives are not very big. There's not very much stuff going on in their lives. It's mainly about hanging out with their boyfriends, and those are some sweet kids. Admittedly, they're terrible babysitters. Awful,
yes, they are.
Awful babysitters. But they're sweet kids. None of them deserve to die. So yeah. Okay. My other thing that I wanted to recommend. So yeah, Halloween 2, very disturbing, but I've reevaluated how I feel about Zombie. Halloween. Other than that, Earbud Theater, I just wanted to mention the second to the most recent episode of Earbud Theater, which is a podcast show of audio horror. The episode was called The Current. It's like 45 minutes long, so you listen to it while you're driving around. It made the hair on my arm stand up. It is the story of this sheriff, this woman who's like the deputy sheriff in her county, and she is going out to investigate this, some disappearances at the local lake. And it turns out there is a mysterious current in the lake that drags people down, and once it grabs onto you, it will not let go. And so if you can imagine making a Jaws-style story about a stationary object, it is fascinating and it is terrifying. I mean, it is really, really scary. So that was the best discovery I had of the season, is the episode. It's the short subject, The Current, which is an episode, completely actors acting it out, just like old school on Earbud Theater. You got to check this out. So that's my endorsement. Okay, so and that brings us to the end of our discussion of Halloween 5. We have 2 more movies in our Halloween series this month: Halloween 6, which will wrap up this trilogy that we're in, and then Halloween the Reboot. Come on down to the Facebook page. Let us know what you think. We love hearing from you. We love engaging, and it's a lot of fun. I know that we get so much out of it. Leave reviews. We totally want to read them, and also, honestly, the reviews help people find the show. So you can just go to iTunes and leave a review there. It's a big help. Thank you, everybody, and I can't wait to be back next week.
Awesome.
Good night.
Good night.
Hasta
Good night.
pronto.
Yeah, bye.